Chapter 1. Betrayal always burns hotter than the flames of the earth. Olenna learned this immutable truth as the village elder's callous hands shoved her over the jagged edge of the caldera. The sulphurous air whipped her dark hair into a frenzy, tearing the desperate plea right from her throat. Heat, blistering and absolute, rushed up to swallow her whole. Down below, the molten rock churned like a restless ocean of liquid gold, casting grotesque shadows against the cavern walls. She had healed their sick. She had foraged for their wounded, and in return, they offered her flesh to the abyss. A deafening roar fractured the cavernous space, shaking dust from the stone vault above. The monster of destruction, they called it. A towering nightmare of obsidian scales and molten wrath. It surged upward from the magma lake, a colossal dragon wrapped in agonizing, unnatural fire, its jaws unhinged, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth, dripping with liquid flame. Olenna squeezed her eyes shut. She braced for the crushing end, the final bite of the inferno. But the human will to survive is a wild, unpredictable entity, lurking dormant until the very precipice of death. As the beast lunged, a sudden piercing cold erupted from the deepest core of her chest. It surged down her arms, freezing the blood in her veins, pooling into her trembling palms. She thrust her hands forward in a blind, desperate defense, her bare skin slammed against the dragon's bleeding, scorched snout. Frost bloomed. A blinding pulse of cerulean light exploded through the suffocating ash. Ice magic, an ancient dormant power she never knew she possessed, spiraled outward, crystallizing over the dragon's smoldering scales. The beast let out a startled, deafening shriek. The savage fire coating its body instantly died, replaced by a soothing, impossible chill. The creature faltered in midair, its colossal wings failing to catch the updraft. Gravity reclaimed them both. They crashed onto a wide shelf of hardened obsidian with a bone-jarring impact. Olenna gasped, the collision knocking the breath completely from her lungs. Thick steam billowed around her, smelling of ozone and melted snow. As the gray veil parted, the monstrous dragon was gone. In its place knelt a man. He was imposing, a royal warrior built of corded muscle and dusted with volcanic ash. Scars crisscrossed his broad chest, weaving tales of ancient, brutal wars that no ordinary man could survive. He loomed over her, bracing his powerful arms on either side of her head, effectively caging her fragile body against the heated rock. Olenna's breath hitched. She stared up into eyes the color of liquid amber. They were wild, feral, yet swimming in an ocean of profound, ancient torment. For the first time in centuries, the excruciating agony that had constantly shredded Balthazar's insides vanished. The cursing fire in his royal blood, a venom that burned without consuming, had been silenced by a single touch. He stared down at the delicate creature beneath him. Her skin was pale, shivering violently despite the suffocating volcanic heat. Her scent, a crisp, intoxicating blend of winter frost, rain, and sweet pine, infiltrated his heightened senses, cutting through the stench of sulfur. His heart hammered a frantic, rapid rhythm against his ribs. The predatory instinct of his dragon soul clawed its way to the surface, demanding immediate submission. A fierce, uncontrollable possessiveness coiled tight in his gut. This tiny, freezing female had done the impossible. She had tamed his inferno. He leaned down, his movements fluid and deadly. His face hovered mere inches from hers. The blistering heat radiating from his skin clashed with the lingering frost on her fingertips. Olenna trembled, paralyzed by the sheer magnetism of his gaze. She was terrified. acutely aware that he could snap her neck with a flick of his wrist, yet she was inexplicably anchored by the profound loneliness echoing in his amber eyes. "From this moment," Balthazar growled. His voice was a deep, gravelly vibration that resonated through the stone beneath her, vibrating straight into her bones. "Your life belongs to me, Bride of Fire." Before Olenna could process the commanding weight of his words, a sharp, deadly hiss sliced through the sulphurous air. It came from above. The village elders, peering over the crater's edge, sought to silence their discarded sacrifice forever. A poisoned arrow plummeted from the shadows. It buried itself deep into Olenna's back with a sickening thud. A sharp, fractured gasp escaped her lips. Pain, cold and venomous, exploded through her veins, overriding the chill of her magic. She choked, a dark spray of blood spotting Balthazar's chest. Her eyes fluttered, the vibrant amber of his gaze blurring into darkness as her body went completely limp against the king's towering frame. Chapter 2. Olenna woke to the glide of silk and the sharp medicinal sting of a poultice on her back. She groaned, a fractured sound that echoed in the vast chamber. The walls were imposing dark stone, draped heavily with crimson velvet. This was no village hut. This was the legendary fortress of Valkarath. A small, nervous man with darting eyes hovered near her bedside. He wrung his hands, smelling distinctly of stale fear and lavender. "You are awake, my lady," he squeaked. "I am Pip." "Where am I?" Olenna attempted to sit up. Searing pain lanced down her spine, stealing her breath. "Do not move," Pip urged, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper. "The king brought you here. He nearly slaughtered your entire village when that arrow struck you." Pip hugged his own arms. "The hellfire curse took him. He is locked in the abyssal dungeons right now, chained like a beast so he doesn't burn the fortress to the ground." The memory of those tormented amber eyes flashed in her mind. He had saved her. Now he was burning alive from the inside out. Olenna pushed past the agonizing pain. She swung her legs over the edge of the towering bed. "I must go to him," she demanded. She grabbed a small satchel of herbs Pip had left on the nightstand. General Vance blocked the heavy oak door. He was a towering man with cold, calculating eyes. "The king will tear you apart, little girl. He is lost to the madness." "Step aside, General," Olenna said. Her voice trembled, but her stance remained resolute. She pushed past his imposing frame, limping toward the spiraling stone stairs that plunged deep into the earth. The air grew suffocatingly hot. The stench of sulphur and scorched iron burned her lungs. In the center of a cavernous cell, suspended by colossal iron chains, Balthazar thrashed. He was entirely feral. Flames licked across his scarred skin. He roared, a deafening sound that rattled the iron bars. He strained against his bindings, desperate to destroy anything in his path. Olenna stepped into the cell. Balthazar's head snapped toward her. His pupils were blown wide, consumed by the inferno. "Leave!" he bellowed. His voice was a guttural, jagged warning. "Get out before I burn you to ash." He lunged, the chains pulling taut with a sickening crack. He wanted to rip her apart, yet as her crisp scent of winter frost reached his heightened senses, his frantic struggling hitched. He craved the cold. He was starving for the impossible chill of her touch. He fought himself, roaring in pure agony, warning her away to protect her from his own monstrous instincts. Olenna refused to run. She stripped away her fear. She looked past the terrifying beast and saw the profound, crushing solitude of a king trapped in his own body. She took a slow, deliberate step forward, then another. Ignoring his feral snarls, Olenna tore a wide strip of fabric from the hem of her borrowed silken gown. She reached out with trembling fingers. She pressed her bare, ice-cold palm directly flat against the center of his molten left pectoral. The moment her skin made contact, the violent flames hissed. They died into wisps of gray smoke. Relief, sharp and immediate, flooded Balthazar's tortured features. But as the fire receded, Olenna gasped. She stared at the flesh over his heart. A vile, black, magical seal was deeply rooted into his skin. It twisted like necrotic vines into his very veins. She recognized that crest instantly. It was the ancestral emblem of her village elders. Balthazar's colossal hand suddenly snapped up. He seized her fragile wrist in a vice-like grip. His amber eyes flared with lethal, murderous intent. "Your own kind," Balthazar gritted out, each word dripping with venom. "They turned me into a monster." The cruel truth has been exposed. How will Olenna face the fact that the very people she risked her life to heal are the root of this despicable crime? Will the budding romance between the Dragon King and the little healer be crushed by this betrayal? Hit subscribe now, turn on notifications, and leave your predictions in the comments below. Your support is a huge motivation for our channel. See you in Chapter 3. Chapter 3. The truth tasted like coarse ash on her tongue. Olenna stared at the black seal marred into the king's flesh. It was a vicious, undeniable betrayal. Her own people had crafted this torment. She should have fled the fortress. She should have feared the feral beast lurking beneath his scarred exterior. Instead, she stayed. She became his personal healer. It was her silent penance, a desperate vow to mend what her kin had shattered. The days that followed blurred into a delicate, dangerous dance of elements. Balthazar's body burned with an unnatural, blistering fever. Every application of her soothing salves sparked a violent clash between them. Her hands were perpetually freezing. His skin was liquid fire. When her icy fingertips mapped the ruined ridges of his chest, he would suck in a sharp breath. Plumes of faint steam would rise from their point of contact. The air between them would grow incredibly thick, laden with an unspoken magnetic tension. She smelled of winter pines and fresh rain. He smelled of wood smoke and spiced amber. Pip, the nervous little servant, proved to be an unexpected meddler. One freezing morning, Olenna woke to find her meager cloaks entirely vanished. The stone fortress was brutally cold. Left with no other choice, she draped herself in one of Balthazar's oversized royal shirts. The dark silk pooled around her mid-thigh. When Balthazar entered her chambers, he froze dead in his tracks. His amber eyes darkened instantly. The sight of her, engulfed entirely in his scent and wearing his garments, triggered a primal instinct. A low, territorial rumble vibrated deep within his chest. He looked at her with a consuming hunger that made her pulse race wildly. He did not ask for his shirt back. His fierce protectiveness surfaced without warning. Later that week, General Vance offered to show Olenna a basic defensive stance in the armory. The general's gloved hand barely grazed her shoulder to adjust her posture. A deafening snarl echoed across the courtyard. Balthazar crossed the sparring grounds in 3 towering strides. His body radiated a scorching, lethal heat that sent the guards scrambling backward. He shoved Vance aside with terrifying ease. His powerful arm wrapped around Olenna's waist, pulling her flush against his side. His golden eyes dared the general to breathe. Beneath his rough, imposing shell, Olenna felt his erratic heartbeat. He was utterly terrified of losing her. She leaned into his sturdy frame, letting her cool touch seep through his tunic. His clumsy, genuine care was melting the frozen walls around her heart. Then came the night of the Red Moon banquet. The fortress was awash in crimson light. Shadows danced along the high Gothic arches. The atmosphere was thick with a heady, intoxicating anticipation. Balthazar avoided the crowded hall entirely. Instead, he cornered Olenna on an isolated balcony overlooking the jagged mountains. The cool night air clashed beautifully with the immense heat of his body. He stepped into her space. There was nowhere to run. She did not want to. He reached out. His calloused fingers gently tilted her chin upward. The fierce Dragon King looked at her with profound, aching reverence. He leaned down, moving with excruciating slowness. His breath brushed her parted lips. The long-suppressed tension coiled tight, ready to snap into a consuming kiss. A catastrophic explosion shattered the peace. The ornate glass doors blew outward in a storm of jagged shards. Olenna screamed as the shockwave knocked her backward. A dark, hooded assassin burst through the billowing smoke. The intruder hurled a wicked poison spike orb straight toward her. Balthazar lunged. He shielded her with his own body. The spiked sphere slammed deep into his broad chest. A sickening, visceral sound echoed through the night. Balthazar fell to his knees. He threw his head back and unleashed an agonizing, blood-curdling roar. The venom ripped through his veins, igniting the cursed magic. Right in the middle of the shattered balcony, his human form began to tear apart. He transformed back into the ferocious, towering dragon. Chapter 4. The colossal beast tore through the ancient stone. Balthazar was gone. Only the mindless, agonizing fury of the dragon remained. He thrashed against the collapsing archways, his spiked tail fracturing the courtyard pillars into dust. General Vance shouted desperate, useless commands. The royal guards fell back, shielding their faces from the blistering, inescapable heat. The fortress of Valkarath was burning to the ground. Through the suffocating smoke, the dark assassin darted forward. He held a secondary blade, dripping with a lethal, shimmering venom. He aimed for the dragon's exposed, thrashing throat. Olenna did not run. Her lungs burned with ash, but her legs moved on pure, reckless instinct. She threw her fragile body directly into the path of the assassin's blade. She stood between the monster and his death. The assassin sneered, driving the poisoned dagger down. Then, something inside Olenna snapped. A dormant, ancient seal within her blood shattered completely. She was not a mere mortal. The bitter, isolating cold she had cursed her entire life finally made sense. She was a frost weaver, the last breathing air of a mythical, forgotten ice clan. Absolute zero erupted from her core. A towering shockwave of cerulean frost blasted outward, blinding and absolute. The assassin froze instantly, becoming a statue of solid ice mid-strike. The glacial aura crashed into the frenzied dragon. It pierced his blazing scales, plunging deep into his boiling veins. The hellfire toxin was purged, washed away by the overwhelming, pristine cold. Olenna collapsed to her knees, gasping for air. The lifelong chill of her past vanished, replaced by a profound, terrifying purpose. She looked up through the dissipating steam. The dragon was gone. Balthazar stood amidst the frozen wreckage. He was entirely bare, his scarred chest heaving with deep, rapid breaths. He did not care about the bewildered guards. He ignored the shattered stone. His amber eyes locked onto Olenna, burning with absolute primal clarity. The moon goddess had not made a mistake. She was his perfect, impossible counterbalance. He closed the distance in 3 predatory strides. He dropped to his knees, his large calloused hand gripping the nape of her neck. A fierce, possessive growl vibrated against her collarbone. Before she could even breathe, he sank his sharp, elongated canines deeply into the crook of her neck. Olenna cried out. A visceral, electric shock wave ripped through her body. The mate bond snapped into place, tethering their souls with violent, undeniable force. But as their blood mingled, the sky above Valkarath violently darkened. The midday sun was swallowed by a sprawling, unnatural black mist. Alphagareth marched through the shattered fortress gates. A terrifying army of shadowed beasts flanked him, their eyes glowing with pure malice. The true mastermind had finally arrived. Chapter 5. The bite was a brand of fire and ice. Olenna gasped, her fingers digging into his broad shoulders. The metallic tang of her own blood mingled with the spiced amber of his skin. The mate bond roared to life, a colossal tether linking their souls. Outside, the sky fractured into leaden clouds. Alphagareth's dark army loomed at the gates, their corrupted scents suffocating the winter air. "Fall back!" General Vance bellowed over the chaos. Balthazar scooped Olenna into his arms. He moved with a terrifying, predatory grace, ignoring the looming war. He carried her deep into the fortress, kicking open the oak doors of the royal bedchamber. The world outside ceased to exist. He set her gently on the vast silken bed. His amber eyes were frantic, wide with the residual terror of his feral state. The curse still clawed at his veins, but the newly forged bond demanded absolute completion. He hovered over her, his imposing frame trembling. He was an apex predator, terrified of breaking his fragile mate. Olenna did not flinch. She reached up, her cool fingers tracing the harsh line of his jaw. The scent of winter pine and fresh rain washed over him, soothing the beast beneath his skin. Her cerulean eyes held absolute, unwavering consent. "I am yours," she whispered. A fractured groan tore from his throat. He crushed his mouth to hers. It was a collision of impossible elements. Blistering heat met pristine cold. Her frost weaver magic surged, intertwining with his draconian fire. As their bodies moved in desperate rhythmic harmony, the hellfire curse was completely eradicated. The necrotic seal vanished from his chest, leaving only smooth, unblemished skin. Dawn broke with the deafening sound of shattered stone. The immense magical energy of Olenna's awakening had acted as a beacon. Gareth's forces swarmed the courtyard. The acrid stench of dark magic and spilled blood infiltrated the royal chambers. Balthazar stood by the shattered balcony, his jaw clenched. For the first time in his immortal life, the Dragon King tasted true, paralyzing fear. It was not for his throne, but for the delicate woman standing beside him. He pulled her flush against his side, burying his nose in her neck to inhale her calming scent. "I will not lose you." He sprawled down, his heart hammering against her shoulder. Olenna grasped his hand. Her skin was no longer painfully freezing, but comfortably cool. "We fight together," she declared. Below them, the fortress defenses finally crumbled. General Vance fought with savage fury, his blade a blur of lethal silver. Beside him, little Pip hurled explosive alchemical vials into the horde. But the enemy numbers were crushing. A dark surge of corrupted magic blasted the courtyard. Vance and Pip collapsed, their bodies motionless on the blood-soaked cobblestones. Before Balthazar could unleash his wrath, the royal chamber doors exploded inward. A suffocating, oppressive aura choked the room. Alphagareth stepped through the debris, wielding a pulsating obsidian artifact. The dark relic emitted a shrieking frequency that instantly paralyzed Balthazar's draconian reflexes. A whip of pure, shadowy magic lashed out. It coiled violently around Olenna's throat. She choked, her hands clawing uselessly at the immaterial chains as she was hoisted into the air. Her vision blurred, the room spinning into an icy darkness. Gareth flashed a savage, triumphant smile. He looked at the immobilized, enraged Dragon King. "Come to the Forbidden Peak," Gareth sneered, his voice dripping with venomous malice. "Trade your throne for your bride before I burn her to ashes." Chapter 6. Gareth's dark magic ripped her from the chamber, leaving behind a sudden suffocating void. Balthazar dropped to his knees, a visceral roar tearing from his throat. The agony of their physical separation was a serrated blade in his chest, but the mate bond, newly forged and humming with pristine power, remained unbroken. He could feel her. Her heartbeat echoed in his own veins, a steady drum calling him to war. The hellfire curse no longer chained his beast. When he shifted this time, there was no agonizing tear of flesh, no maddening corruption. He erupted into the sky as the ancient dragon. Obsidian scales gleamed like polished night. His wingspan eclipsed the dying sun. He launched toward the Forbidden Peak, a colossal force of pure, untainted majesty. The frigid winds of the mountain summit whipped Olena's dark hair across her face. She was bound to a jagged monolith, suspended above a sheer lethal drop. Gareth paced before her, his shadowed army anticipating the arrival of their broken king. "He will kneel," Gareth sneered. His foul breath plumed in the freezing air. Olena closed her cerulean eyes. She did not succumb to the terror. Through the golden tether of their bond, she felt Balthazar's approach. He was a towering inferno in the sky. She drew upon the ancient frost weaver lineage sleeping in her marrow. The temperature plummeted to absolute 0. The magical chains binding her wrists turned brittle, coated in thick, shimmering rime. With a sharp, deliberate twist of her arms, the enchanted iron fractured into 1,000 useless shards. She landed gracefully on the snow-dusted stone. Gareth spun around, his arrogant sneer faltering into sudden dread. Before the treacherous Alpha could summon his dark magic, the clouds above split open. The ancient dragon descended like a falling star. The impact cratered the summit, sending a concussive wave of force that knocked Gareth's guards to the precipice. Balthazar did not blindly rage. His amber eyes sought Olena, instantly confirming her safety. They moved in perfect, unspoken synchronization. Olena unleashed a blinding storm of glacial ice, freezing the shadowed beasts where they stood. Balthazar unleashed a torrent of liquid gold. His dragon fire did not harm her. It melded flawlessly with her frost, creating an obliterating cyclone of steam and searing pressure. The rebel alliance was instantly vaporized. Gareth stumbled backward, his dark artifact crumbling to ash. The Dragon King advanced. With one colossal, inevitable strike, Balthazar's talons pinned the treacherous Alpha to the bedrock. The threat was crushed. The mountain fell utterly silent. The towering beast shimmered, intense heat waves distorting the air. Flesh yielded to form until Balthazar stood before her as a man. He was unblemished, imposing, and breathless. The lingering scent of winter pine and fresh rain drew him forward. He did not rush. He closed the distance with profound, aching reverence. Olena met him halfway. She pressed her cool palms against his broad chest, feeling the steady, rhythmic thrum of his heart. There was no cursed seal. There was no fevered agony. There was only the vibrant pulse of a king who had finally found his soul. He wrapped his powerful arms around her waist, burying his face in the crook of her neck. He inhaled her scent deeply, a ragged breath of absolute relief. "You are unharmed," he murmured against her skin. His voice was a low, gravelly vibration that sent a soothing warmth straight to her toes. "Because you came for me," she whispered. She leaned entirely into his solid embrace. Their bond hummed, a luminous thread weaving their spirits into one indivisible entity. The isolating shadows of their pasts were utterly swept away, replaced by a quiet, unbreakable trust. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, sealing their victory with a tender, devastating devotion. Weeks later, the grand hall of Valkarath was bathed in radiant golden sunlight. The rubble had been cleared. Thousands of subjects knelt in breathless reverence, standing at the high altar. Pip, bandaged but beaming with tearful pride, unrolled a parchment scroll to proclaim the new era. Balthazar stood before the obsidian throne. He did not look at the cheering crowds. His amber eyes were fixed entirely on the woman beside him. He lifted a delicate crown, masterfully forged from his own shed dragon scales and embedded with pristine winter diamonds. He placed it gently upon Olena's dark hair. "My mate," Balthazar declared. His voice carried the weight of eternal love. "My frost queen." Olena smiled, her heart overflowing with a fierce, quiet joy. The centuries-old curse was broken forever. The fortress of Valkarath stood united, entering an era of unprecedented prosperity, ruled eternally by the devastating power of fire and the healing grace of ice.